Hey, what's up, Dose Family?
Hey guys.
What's up?
Today we're going to talk about Emma's diagnosis story. So Emma was diagnosed September 24th of 2018? Yeah, 2018. Yes. So about a year, almost 2 years ago. But
on its way.
Do you remember anything from your
I only remember going to the hospital and passing out. Well, I remember.
Okay.
I don't remember anything else.
So starting, it was like summertime, and we went to like Knott's Berry Farm. We had a
boat ride up in Big Bear.
Oh no, well we went to Utah first to visit Jason's parents. That was a fun trip, and then after that we came home, and then we went to Big Bear. We had a trip with our friends, and we were on a boat, and Emma was acting a little funny. And then I remember we were playing poker, and then she just kept going to the bathroom. And I was like, what is going on? And then after that, she was sleeping, and then we went to bed, and then she just kept going to the bathroom. And I thought she had like a UTI or something because she was eating chips, and we were busy. And we weren't thinking about how much water she was drinking, or she was dehydrated or something. And we didn't think anything crazy of it. And then we came back home, and we went to a family party at Jason's uncle's house. Mm-hmm. And then she has like a bunch of cousins there, and she didn't want to play at all. And she's usually like instantly like, Mom, bye, I'm gonna go play, I'm not gonna eat. And she didn't want to play at all. Like,
she just wanted to sit on my lap. Mm-hmm. And just kind of lay her head on me.
Yeah.
Which was, it's the thing is like, that doesn't say, oh, your kid is sick or there's something wrong with your kid. It's just, oh, you have a tired kid that day. Hey, yeah. That's normally a good thing, right? You get like a little break and a little cuddle session. But
even like your family was like, is Emma okay?
Yeah.
Like, and we just thought she was tired from all the traveling we were doing. Mm-hmm. Because it was like back-to-back like activities over the summer. Mm-hmm. And then it was like Jason's birthday, and then we were looking back at photos, and she just looked like really different. Like her eyes were sunken in. And
her eyes were sunken in.
She was so skinny.
She was a thick baby. Like, when she was 2, she had like a lot of baby fat and stuff like that. We have videos of her when she was before she was diagnosed, and you can tell like she's just thicker boned.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice she was losing a bunch of weight until Erica's mom said something, and I picked her up and I held her, and I can like feel her spine, and I was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. And then she started school.
That's right.
And we thought, and it was super hot that summer, and we thought that it was because she was just running around, and like she was getting extra exercise because she had like morning play, and then she had like recess, and then she had after nap play, and then she was just playing a lot. So we just thought it was that. And then I think it was like a Thursday. So this is the week that it started. It was Thursday, and Emma went to school, and her teacher was like, Erica, Emma was acting really weird today, and she kind of was just holding Play-Doh and was just holding it and looking at me and didn't say anything, and was like, Emma, say something, like tell me what you need. And Emma was just like kind of had like this blank stare. So then the teacher thought it was weird, and then
we both went to poker.
I know. And then she went to the playground, and then I got there, and she peed herself. It was weird. Like, Emma's been potty trained since she was like,
I did that.
She was like 1 and like 9 months. Like probably like before she was 2 years old, she was fully potty trained. She wasn't peeing the bed. Like, it was just bizarre for her like for her to wet herself. So it was just weird. So I picked her up, and then we went home, and usually the Fridays I was off work. And so then I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay home and kind of hang out with them. Saturday came around, and that's when she started acting really weird. Like she was just laying on the floor in our laps. She wasn't playing. She was just like, I'm really tired, Mom. Like, uh-oh, your sugar's low. She's just like, I'm really tired, Mom, and I don't want to play. And I remember she was in the living room on Jason's lap, and she was like panting. Like, you know how like a dog lays down on you and is like, and I was like, okay, we have to take her to the hospital. So that Sunday night, it was fast forward to the next day, Sunday night, Jason takes Emma to the hospital with my mom. And I think I was working that day, huh?
You were working.
I was working, and I was really worried. I was like, Jay, I'm not going to go to work. I'm going to go with you guys. And he was like, no, go to work. It's only a couple of hours. Just go to work, and I'll let you know how she does. And I said, okay. So then they take her to the emergency room, and the nurse or the doctor had said to get like a chest x-ray, right, Jay?
Yes. So they did x-rays with her. They did oxygen tests with her to make sure her oxygen level was fine.
Because she was panting.
She was panting.
Mm-hmm.
She was out of breath. She had weight loss. And all these things came back with no negative result. And we just kind of left like, okay.
No, I texted Jay, and I was like, Jay, ask them to do a blood test.
Oh.
To see if there was any more infection, or like if she had like some type of infection. So with like the chest x-ray, they had just said, oh, she has an upper respiratory infection. And I was like, I was at work, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because she doesn't have a fever. She isn't coughing like phlegm, or doesn't have a stuffy nose, or it doesn't sound like she's wheezing. So I was like, I don't think she has an upper respiratory infection. So I didn't agree with what the diagnosis was. Jason had asked him to do blood work, and what did the doctor say? Like it's not necessary.
Yeah, she said you know
something
what? I
like in those
exactly
lines.
But a blood test wasn't taken. It was mentioned to be taken, and it wasn't.
Yeah, because I asked Jay to ask the doctor.
Right.
And she was like, "Oh, it's not necessary. We've diagnosed her with an upper respiratory infection." So I was like, "Okay, whatever." And then they prescribed her a steroid for her to, for her to stop panting so much. So then that night I came home. It was like 10 o'clock. Emma was sleeping, and then I was like, Jay, I'm just gonna take her to the pediatrician the next morning, because I really trust our pediatrician, and I was like, I'm just gonna take her the next morning. So the next morning, Jay gets ready for work, and at this time he's riding a motorcycle and has a Cigna on his helmet, and he doesn't connect it.
Cigna is a Bluetooth connection where I can talk on the phone while riding a bike.
It's on his helmet.
It's on my helmet.
Yeah, so
it's wired in.
For some odd reason, this day
it's like the one time I was just like, oh, I'll listen to the sound of my engine versus music, right?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
So he leaves around like 6 o'clock in the morning, and Emma usually wakes up around the same time that Jason wakes up. And she comes into our room, and she just looks gray to the point where I was like, what's going on with my child? And I lay her in bed, and she looks at me and is like, Mommy, please help me. And I'm just like, oh my God, what's going on? And she turns gray. Oh my God. She turns gray, and her lips were purple, and I was screaming. I was like, Mom, please call 911. Something's wrong with Emma. And I take her from our bed, and I put her on the floor, and I'm just chest rubbing her to wake her up, and I'm like, Emma, please wake up. And I thought that she had died. And then my mom called 911, and my mom was like, just get changed, because I was in pajamas. I wanted to put a bra on. And then I just put on leggings and whatever shirt I was wearing to bed, and the paramedics came, and the fighters came and was like, so what's happened? What symptoms she has? And I told them she's constantly urinating, she's thirsty all the time, she was panting last night, and then she passed out this morning. And I told them that we went to the emergency room, and that I told her what they diagnosed her with was an upper respiratory infection, and they were like, no, she's diabetic. And I'm like, diabetic? Thinking, I just think about my dad, my dad's diabetic, and he, he isn't taking care of himself, he didn't take care of himself in the past. And I didn't think oh, she's type 1 diabetic, I didn't think that. Why don't you have a juice box or something?
Can you get it or no? Okay.
So I was just like, what? And he's like, yeah, she's type 1 diabetic, and they prick her finger and her sugar's like 6 something. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was 6 something. And they asked for the discharge papers from the hospital that night. And I said, and I gave it to him, and he said, did you give her the steroids, it was like, I think it was like albuterol or something, I don't remember, but just to help with her breathing. And I was like, they diagnosed her with an upper respiratory infection, and then they said, did you give her the medication? And I said, no, like, I didn't believe it. I knew in my heart that she didn't have an upper respiratory infection. I knew it. So I didn't give it to her. And he was like, good, because if you gave it to her, she would have died in her sleep. And I was like, oh my God, you know, because I didn't know that, you know, medicines shoot up your sugars. I didn't know that. And he told me that. He was like, you would have killed her in her sleep. So your gut instinct is really, really, like, like, how do I say it? Like you should listen to your gut instinct, you know?
I just have a really smart wife that knows everything.
That's
she knows
not true.
everything.
I don't know everything.
You do until you always do. You just always are right.
Yeah, so then that was very traumatic for me, and I as you can tell, I'm still very emotional about it, because I literally thought that she died in my arms.
It's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
When it's coming out of my mouth, I get choked up, and my eyes start watering. I hear my wife talking about it, and my eyes water. You know, that was a very hard and difficult time.
So now it makes sense. Like, after they said, oh, you know, she's type 1 diabetic, it made sense to us, you know? Like when you think about your kid being sick, like, you don't automatically think like, oh, she has cancer, oh, she has type 1 diabetes. You don't think that, because unless you have somebody in your family who has it, like, who has type 1 diabetes, you know, like, we have nobody in our family that has type 1 diabetes. We don't even know a person, like a friend, a family friend, or anybody, you know, that has type 1 diabetes. So after that, they transport her in the ambulance, and she's out of it, you know. She's there, but her eyes are rolling back, and she's kind of, you know, she's sleepy, you know. And what I specifically remember is I'm holding her in the stretcher, and this paramedic is fishing for a vein, because she's so dehydrated. Her veins are so small that they're fishing for it, and the bus is moving, like, and she's just like, you know. And if you know Emma, she does not like getting her blood taken, and she'll cry and scream and kick before you get her blood taken. She's
a lot better now, but
oh,
when this all happened, it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah, before all the shots before. And she was kind of just like bobbling around, and then we get to Children's Hospital, CHLA, and they were so nice. And I was like, in all of this, I'm like trying to call Jay, and I'm like, Jay, like, he's not answering the phone.
I get to work, and there's like 27 missed calls in 30 minutes, and I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, like, it's serious. And like, he finally answers the phone, and I'm at the hospital. I'm like, Jay, you need to come. Like, Emma passed out. She's diabetic, and we're in the hospital, and it's serious. Like, you need to come to CHLA. And I thought he was going to come straight to CHLA, but he didn't come straight to CHLA. What did you end up doing?
Are you talking about when I made my little visit to the hospital for misdiagnosing my daughter?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
After Jay got to the hospital after his pit stop, an endocrinologist came and was just telling us like what's going on. We were transferred to the ICU, and they were taking
kids outside,
neighbors. So we were transferred to the ICU, and they were taking her blood gases every hour, I think, in the beginning. And it was kind of like when they were drawing the blood, it was so hard for them to take blood because she was so dehydrated. but then they needed the IV to be open and for them to draw blood, and then for them to give her insulin, like, so they couldn't bring her sugar down straight down, because if they brought it too fast, then her brain would have swelled up. How do I say that? Swelled up. It would have swollen up.
Swelled up, and
it would have swollen up, and then she would have been kind of, basically what they said is that she would have been brain dead. So they had to do it slowly. When we got to the hospital, her sugar was like 590. It took a couple of hours for it to go down slowly, but it was so hard for them to pull blood, and it was so hard to see her crying so bad and suffering so much from them taking her blood. Like, I was holding her, and it was just so hard for me to see her suffer like that. And we were seeing so many people, like endocrinologists were coming in, and, you know, nurses were coming in and talking to us, and, you know, saying that we got close and we're very lucky to have, you know, not given her the steroids, and we're so lucky that that my mom called 911. And they were saying, like, if you waited just a couple of hours, like, you guys are lucky, you know. And it was just very scary, and a lot of information, and it was very overwhelming for us. So the first night in the hospital was very rough. Like, Jason and I fought, and, like, we're very emotional, tired, you know. I wanted to stay awake just to be with Emma. They were going in and out of at this point, they were going in and out of our room every 2 hours, and to draw her blood, and then checking her sugars, adjusting the insulin pump, adjusting fluids every 2 hours. And now her sugar's to like 200. And then the next morning, she's still in and out. She's in a coma. She's not waking up. She'll wake up for like 2 minutes and then roll her eyes back and fall back asleep. And it was just really rough. And me and Jason did not want to leave her side. Like, my mom and my aunt came the next morning and was like, go downstairs and eat something. And me and Jay were like, no, like, we don't want to leave her, you know. And my mom was like, just please, like, they're not the nurse had just came in, drew her blood, and was like, just go, like, go down and sit down, get some fresh air. And we're like, okay. And do you remember this? Mm-hmm. And Jay and I went downstairs, and we sat down, and basically we just cried. We, like, looked at each other, and we're like, oh my God, you know, like, what's going on? Like, it was just like a dream that we didn't want to be true.
It's like I don't know how to explain it. I really don't know how to explain it. Yeah. Imagine if someone was telling you, hey, you know what, you got 24 hours before a meteor just destroys everything. Yeah. You know? Like, we were still not in the clear. Literally, that's an understatement of what we felt.
Yeah. It was literally not tough. We were not in the clear at all.
At that time. Yeah, she was very much so, could lose her life, you know, could
not come out of the coma. They don't know how
long her blood sugar was that high for that long. We don't know what kind of side effects are going to happen when she comes to. And,
like, other organ damage, yeah.
It was just...
There was just a lot of worry. Man. She wasn't even awake. Like, she was not even awake at all. And then... We would wake her up and say, hey, you know, we need to prick your finger or your toe to get a blood sample. She would wake up, and she would be, like, responsive and say, no. And she was so exhausted. She would fall asleep, and kind of just... and go to sleep when they would poke her. Yeah.
It would her screaming would take off that much energy, would put her to sleep.
After that, that afternoon, I think late afternoon, she finally started waking up, and she was so thirsty. She was like, please, I want water. Like, she was crying for water, and we couldn't give her water. All they were allowing Emma to eat was ice. Yeah, you're right. You remember that? Yeah. So then she came out of the coma. We were kind of easing into, like, a safer zone. So after that, they were trying to rehabilitate her from, like, walking and, like, sitting up and trying to crawl. not crawl, to color. They wanted her to color. So, like, an activity nurse came in and they gave her crayons. And do you remember what she was doing? She was, like, blowing bubbles at you. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? You got a toy.
Yeah, I was, like, popping them.
Yeah, she was like, Emma, pop the bubbles. And she was trying to pop the bubbles. So, because they wanted her to get some kind of, you know, circulation in her body. Because she was in the bed, basically, for 2 days now. But, yeah, and then we were moved to a regular floor, which was great. I remember, I'll insert the picture here where Emma's sitting at the window and she just looks so peaceful. Like, she's so happy, like, looking out the window, and is just like, look, mommy, there's a car. Mommy, look, like, there's people going into the market. Like, she was back to my child. Like, after that day, we just got our education, and like the nurse educator came in and taught us about carb counting, which was really scary to us and was so overwhelming. And me and Jay were like, what? Like, so what was confusing to me was the fact that you have to correct her blood sugar first, and then you have another equation for carb counting, because everybody's ratio for carbs is totally different. And that was just so weird to me. Like, it didn't click to me right away. So that was my concern. And I think Jason's was like shots, right? Like, you had a lot of questions about shots.
Oh yeah,
I was used to giving shots. I wasn't scared.
I mean, instantly, like, you know, you watch the movies where like people put oxygen in needles, and you know,
oh yeah,
you know, that's
like the extreme.
And I'm like, what if I put like a little air bubble in it?
Like, that's how new Jason was to, like, medical.
I was like, man, I was so precise on every little like detail.
Emma.
And when you're a new parent to a child that's diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, there's so much. My wife has a medical background, so she kind of, like she said before, she's worked with needles and stuff like that before. Where me, I mean, I don't know anything about any of that, you know. And it was a lot of information, and they're showing me how to use needles all of a sudden. And I mean, needles have never been around in my family or anything like that, you know. So it's just like, when you think of needles, you're just like, oh, that shouldn't be anywhere near me, you know. And it's just crazy how natural it is now for our family to be going through everything. And she's great now with her numbers. Oh my God, like, she is like super smart, right?
Oh, like, yeah, I have a medical background, but I've always dealt with older, like, I've dealt with gerontology, meaning like older people at convalescent homes or rehabs. And when they teach you at school about diabetes, they teach you about type 2 is insulin resistant and type 1 is insulin dependent. That's all they talk about. They don't talk about insulin pumps. They don't talk about CGMs, Dexcoms. They don't teach you anything about that. They don't, like, and dehydration and like constant urination is a lot of things. Like, it could have been it could have been a urinary tract infection, you know, like, and then panting it's not something I think like, okay, diabetes. So like, I don't want people to say like, well, if you were in the medical field, then you should know, like, oh, your daughter is type 1. No, like, I wasn't trained in something like that. Like, I'm not a specialist in type 1 diabetes or in diabetes itself. So from like 10 years that I've been in the medical field, not like, I finally encountered a patient with the insulin pump. Like, just a couple of months ago. I think it was when I was pregnant with Logan. Like, remember, Jay? I was like, I finally ran into somebody as a patient that had an insulin pump. So it's just not something common for me it's not common for somebody like to come across, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm happy that CHLA was there for us and have continued to be with us constantly. And they're such a great hospital. I'm not going to mention the hospital that misdiagnosed us, or the hospital, the doctor that, misdiagnosed Emma, but we ran into her again when I was pregnant with Logan, with some complications I had with our pregnancy, and I was very emotional that day. Do you remember, Jay? Mm-hmm. So we ran into her again, and I was so emotional because I don't know if anybody knows this on my social media, but I was supposed to have twins, and I guess one of they were fraternal twins because there was 2 sacs, and I woke up in a, like, long story short, I woke up in a pool of blood, and I went to the bathroom, and I literally felt like a drop from my belly. And I was probably like 4 months pregnant, and I was very emotional. I was crying, and I was like, I think I lost my baby. Like, how can this happen? And I just felt like my life, like, so depressed at that moment. So we went to the we had to go to that hospital because that's where that's where I was supposed to deliver. And I was supposed to deliver Logan, and my OBGYN told me to go there. So I went there again. I went to the same emergency room that Emma was misdiagnosed at. We saw her, and I was very emotional. And the nurse that was taking care of me was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like crying hysterically. And he saw that I was giving Emma an insulin shot, and he goes, "She's diabetic?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I started bawling, and he was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "She was misdiagnosed here by the doctor that's in the other room." And he's like, "Oh, I heard about that. Like, is she okay?" And things like that. And I was so emotional. I told him the whole story, and he goes, "I'm so sorry, this and that." We had a huge meeting about it. And it was a big deal. Just to let you know, it was a big deal here at the hospital. And I was like, good. That's basically all I wanted. Like, I even went to the doctor that I was working for at that time. She was a dermatologist, and her father-in-law was a kind of like a doctor that did malpractice cases. And I told him about what happened, and he said, "Well, no harm, no foul. She didn't die. So there's no money into this." And I was like, and I straight up told him, like, I'm not here for the money. I'm not here to sue somebody and say, like, "Hey, give me your money because you misdiagnosed my child." No, like, all I wanted was for them to be educated, because, now knowing what Emma's diagnosis was, it could have easily been taken care of with just a blood draw, or even a urinalysis. Like, like, it could have been easily corrected, but she didn't want to listen to us, and she refused to do a blood draw. And that's all I just wanted. I wanted kind of peace of mind where, they were gonna step up and say, "Okay, let's just check her blood. Let's just check her, let's do a blood draw, a simple blood draw that takes 1 minute, for the doctor to order blood work. That's all, or even just a finger prick." So that's all I wanted, and I got kind of peace of mind that they were educated at the hospital. So yeah, that's basically the end of it. And now, we are living with type 1 diabetes with her, and it's hard, and we learn something new every day, and it changes every day. It's not a constant thing, like, she's growing, growth hormones, she's trying new foods, and we don't know how her body's going to react. But, we're trying to just do it and take care of it day by day, But we know how scary it is with those families who are going through, new diagnosis. Like, we know how hard it is, and then we know how scary it is. And I just hope that we spread awareness to everybody out there that, doesn't know what's going on with their child. And maybe we can be those people who gives you the signs and symptoms of type 1 diabetes, and you guys can just tell your doctor, like, "Hey, can you test for type 1 diabetes?" And hopefully it saves a life. That's basically all I really want to do with making videos, you know, and of course making memories, but I do want to be able to be an advocate for these kids who can't really speak their minds, you know. So I hope that you like this video, right, Emma? What do you have to say for yourself?
Tired.
We had a long day. We had doctor's appointments. She got her blood drawn today.
Yeah, but I took it off.
They just want to see if she's anemic, but yeah. That's our diagnosis story.
But everything else with doctors today works good.
Yeah.
Emma's 42 pounds.
Logan's 24. He's in the 95th percentile in his weight. And he's 31 inches long. He's a really tall boy. Emma's 3 feet and 7 inches. She's pretty tall. And she has almost 20/20 vision. Her right eye is 25 and her left eye is 20. But that's our update. But yeah, this is going to be a really long video. But if you guys have any questions, or if you guys want to share your diagnosis story in the comments, please let us know. Or go follow us on Instagram, the.dose.family on Instagram. I post pretty constant on there, but I hope that soon we're gonna be posting a lot more on here. I vlogged 2 days that I need to get these vlogs up and edited. So yeah. All right, peace out, fam.
I don't want to do him.